Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We are here with another episode of Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. Thank you all so much for joining us on this evening. I am so grateful and thankful. We are so grateful and thankful for our audience and for those who are watching and listening on tonight. On this Friday evening, you could be doing so many other things, but you're watching with us, and we're just super grateful for all those who are watching. Please share the broadcast, share, tag, invite, because we're going to be talking about mental health on tonight with a mental health advocate, expert, pioneer. She has really paved the way for mental health in our community and just providing resources. And she's going to be sharing her story with us on tonight. So please share with whoever you think needs to hear this to be encouraged and inspired and uplifted. So tonight with us, we have Dr. Demetrice Smith, who is an author, entrepreneur, mentor, ordained elder, and mental health advocate activist with over 17 years of professional and leadership experience. Dr. Demetrice Smith is a graduate of Texas Wesleyan University and holds a bachelor's degree in political science and communications, a master's of science degree in leadership from Walden University, and a doctorate of business administration also from Walden University. She is passionate about igniting the leadership potential in others and holds a master coaching certification from the Association for Talent Development. Dr. Smith is the founder and chief executive officer of Creeping Vines Online, a nonprofit organization, 501c3 corporation dedicated to mental health awareness, education, advocacy, and training. Her motto, Gaining Victory, is part of her personal testimony after 30 years of living in a cave called depression. Wow, I am super excited to have her on here with us tonight. Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour audience, let's welcome Dr. Demetrice Smith.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. We are so thankful and blessed that you chose to join us on tonight. We are so excited. How is your day going so far?
It's been a busy day, but it's a good Friday.
It is a good Friday. We are just, it has been a blessed day. We are safe. We are here and we're excited. So, um, Dr. Smith, I wanted to, just talk about where did your passion to share the impact of depression stem from?
It stemmed from my personal experience
Hmm.
dealing with depression at a very young age, but it
Hmm.
also came from me talking to other people who were experiencing similar feelings, but
Hmm.
didn't know how to express those feelings or didn't feel safe in doing so. So I really wanted to create my organization to really more than anything have others join the dialogue about mental illness and mental wellness so that we can eradicate some of the stigma.
Right. And you said at a very young age, how do you mind sharing how old were you when you started experiencing symptoms of depression?
My earliest memory of having those feelings of sadness started when I was in third grade. I
Wow.
didn't have the vocabulary at that time to talk about what I was feeling, but my earliest memories of having those feelings of sadness and isolation and hopelessness started when I was in third grade. It wasn't until I was in college that I was able to sort of Google some of those feelings and understand what I was going through and then be able to seek professional help related to it.
So I know you said when you first experienced the sadness, did you have some of these feelings of sadness and like long-term sadness? Because I know sometimes we're sad, because something happens. But can you give us a definition of depression? What is depression?
Really, depression is the feeling and the mental capacity. It's kind of physiological and biological in nature when you have low serotonin levels and your body, based on those low chemical levels, starts to emit these emotional feelings of sadness and hopelessness. Depression really comes about when you have the long term, more than 2 weeks long, of these feelings of sadness, overwhelming anxiety, changing habits, and those sorts of things. So everybody experiences sadness. That's not
Right.
something that's new. Depression really becomes something that we recognize when it's the ongoing and long term feelings that don't seem to let up.
Right. And so did you feel like so did you experience this throughout your life? Like you said, up until college, you went and got help. So you experienced this depression throughout life, or was it exasperated by a certain event, or this was just up and down continuously?
It was a combination of things. As I
Mhm.
said, I remember when I think back on when I first started to feel sad.
Right,
As a child, I thought everybody felt that way. I didn't
right.
realize what I was experiencing was anything that was unusual. So the
Mhm.
feelings I had of, I feel sad. I don't feel good today. I
Yeah,
don't feel happy. I don't feel, you know, those were feelings that when I think back on it, I also remember thinking, well, that's normal. That's how people feel. That's, what it is like to be a human
right.
being. So when I continued these feelings, they were heightened, and I can relate and correlate those feelings to my migraine headaches. I
Mm,
suffered from migraine headaches. I've been able to get them under control since I've seen a neurologist consistently and
right.
gotten the right medication. But I noticed that those feelings peaked around my migraine headache times. And so, of course, I found out through going through a headache study that when my brain would swell from the migraines, my serotonin levels would go down, and then the related depression would set in.
Wow. And you didn't really get help with this until, like you said, you got to college.
Yeah, I was an adult. And then
Right.
I didn't get help for my migraines until I was well into adulthood, but I was
Mhm.
able to understand the depression in college and
Right.
did seek therapy for it, but continued to see those spikes, didn't make the correlation until after I had a really, really bad migraine that was almost put me on the brink of suicide. And so I went
Wow.
into a headache study to get my migraines under control, and was also able to identify that one of those triggers for my depression was the low chemical levels that was mitigated by the pain in my head and the swelling.
Wow. So depression is not just a feeling. It's like you said, it's chemical. It's a chemical imbalance. It's something that is off in your body. It can be triggered by various things, like you said, migraine headaches. What are some other things that people can look for if they're not sure if they're depressed or if their child is depressed? Because you were a child going through this. Did anyone ever say anything in your family, like your mom, or did anybody say she's so sad? Or did you hear people talking about that or saying anything to you?
I think that's one of the reasons why there is so much stigma, is because people aren't talking.
Hmm.
And when I was in third grade, it wasn't too long ago, but there wasn't a dialogue about mental health happening in any family or any community that I was aware of. There wasn't any programs in school that addressed it. There was the only time we really heard about depression was when someone did something really bad. And then we'd hear the law enforcement or the TV say, did they have a mental illness? And so that pushed people further back into the closet, so that I'm certainly not a bad person, so that I
Sure.
wouldn't do anything like that. So I'm not going to admit I have those feelings. So it compounded the stigma to not talk about it, because you got the impression that depressed people did horrible things.
Right. Okay.
The
So,
other One of the other things I wanted to share, though, was it wasn't only the migraines, it was also severe bullying that I experienced. And I think that's something that some of the listeners might also be able to understand is depression can be emotionally triggered. It can be trauma triggered by,
right,
incidents in your childhood or in your life, not just childhood, but in your life in general. When you lose a loved one, those feelings of sadness that don't go away can also trigger traumatic episodes in your life, as this pandemic has shown the world that we are all in trauma right now. And there's
right.
so many people experiencing these feelings of hopelessness that are long term, that could be borderline depression.
Wow. And that's exactly what I was getting ready to ask you. Do you feel like with this pandemic, it has triggered, like you said, can be something that triggers depression, like something like this, a pandemic, or anything like
Trauma can definitely
trauma,
do that.
like a
And
school
bullying
shooting
is
or
a form
something.
of trauma. So I had the bullying aspect that compel those feelings of hopelessness and isolation, but I also had the biological and physiological components as well. So I was
Oh,
fighting two adverse reasons to be depressed.
wow. So just for the audience, I don't know, hopefully everybody can hear me. If you guys can't hear us, let me know. I know Joyce says she's hearing echoes. So I just want to make sure everybody can hear us because this is a very powerful conversation and we don't want anyone to miss any of this information. So I hope everyone can hear us. But Dr. Smith is telling us about her experience with depression and trauma and how she started as an advocate, an activist in the mental health field because of what she experienced starting at the age of 3. So a lot of times we're wondering what's going on with our child.
Well,
Uh,
third grade, actually, yeah.
Third grade, when you were in third grade, so we're wondering what's going on with our child. So it's important to ask them questions and not worry about them being labeled a lot of times, because a lot of times that's where that stigma comes from. We don't want our child labeled. I know as a school counselor, parents tell me, my child is not crazy. Why are they talking to you? And it's not about your child being crazy. It's about us providing support. It's
Yeah.
about us providing resources to your child so they can, you know, have peace and enjoy a life as a child.
Yes.
So, and that's what that stigma, especially in the African American community, we're like, oh, I don't want my child labeled, they're not crazy, they're this or whatever. And so that's what, people, that's why they don't seek the help. And so now we're suffering in silence, right? And
Yeah.
so, right.
Having the right conversation is important. And so, for some of your listeners who are wondering, how would I know if my child were depressed and what would be the right conversation to have with that child? I'm
Mhm.
not a child psychiatrist or psychologist, but I do want to say this. Ask your child some questions when they come to you and say, I'm sad, or you notice a change in their behavior, such as
Right.
eating patterns or sleeping patterns. Ask them how they feel, how they're doing. And when
Mhm.
they say, I feel sad, one of the mistakes that parents make is they often try to fix the sadness with a toy, an ice cream cone, or some other treat. But continue that dialogue so that you can get to the root of that sadness and begin to understand more when there is a doctor that needs to get involved or be seen.
Right. And how do they know? Will someone tell them? I'm sorry, I'm trying, I'm adjusting my sound here.
That's
So
okay.
how do they know when a doctor needs to be seen? Because a lot of times, even in our schools, I've been hearing a lot about disparities in healthcare with African Americans, and the doctors aren't listening to us. They're thinking we're exaggerating our pain and different things like that. So how do we know we need to get help? How do we know that our child needs to see a doctor or a professional?
We don't always know that they're dealing with depression, but when we see a change in those patterns,
Hmm.
when we see their sleep pattern changes, their
Okay.
behavior changing, one of the ways that kids identify depression in their body is through a tummy ache. So
Mm.
if you hear a child consistently saying, my tummy hurts, it's not always
Wow.
a tummy ache as much as our gut is the root of our emotional base. A lot of our nerve endings are
Wow.
there, and it's tied mentally to what we're feeling, also emotionally. So sometimes a child will say, my tummy hurts. If you keep hearing that repeatedly, don't overlook that with the change in menu, but also continue the dialogue. And you may want to have them see a doctor because sometimes a child will equate what's happening in their head with their tummy ache.
Okay. Dr. Smith, if you don't mind, can you turn your volume down just a little bit for us?
Okay, sure. And I'll be happy to put on headphones if that'll help.
Let's try it and see if you
Okay,
don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can you hear me? I can't hear you now. Let's see. It shows that your volume. I'm not sure. I can't hear you. Thank you all so much for your patience while we're trying to work out the technical issues with Dr. Smith. Just trying to make sure that we can hear her and you all don't hear any echoing or vibrating. Um, let me see. Doesn't let me unmute her. Let's see. I think the volume, let me see. Hopefully, we're trying to get the volume together, everyone. So give us a moment because now that she put her earphones in, we can't hear her. Take them out and put them back in. Just, I can't hear you. Yeah. Unplug your, check your volume on your computer. Check your volume on your computer. I don't know what's going on, you guys. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Let me,
Okay.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I had to refresh the screen for some reason.
Okay. I'll try the mic one more time
Okay.
and see if that is any better.
Is that better, everyone?
Is that any better?
I can hear you. So hopefully it's better for the audience because I could hear you. So thank you so much for your patience with this.
No.
Thank you everyone for your patience. So we want to continue this conversation, this very important conversation about mental health in the African American
Okay.
community. I know you had mentioned earlier about stomach aches, and I know when my daughter was in school, she used to tell me that all the time, and I never knew that. I mean, she would wake up and didn't want to go to school. So I don't know if she was depressed or going through like some type of bullying or whatever. And I would ask her, like, Courtney, are you okay? You know, and when she was in middle school, and she would wake up, Mom, my stomach's hurt. And I, like I said, and I was like, you just don't want to go to school.
It could be a
Well,
point of stress, a stress point.
right,
It's in our gut. Yeah.
right. And so parents is really important, you know, instead of us always thinking, oh, you know, you just don't want us to go to school. You're this, you're doing this, or you're doing that. To listen to your child. Like she said, your stomach your gut is like a pain point. Is, you know, it tells you what's going on in your body, right? And so I didn't really notice that or know that until you mentioned that. I was like, wow, that could have been something that she dealt with, and I just didn't know as a parent. You know, and so those are important things that we really need to look for in our children, and have those conversations. Not immediately assume that they're depressed, but just have those conversations, like you said, that ongoing dialogue with our
Maybe
child.
ask them if they've got some anxiety, because a lot of
Mhm.
times there's some anxiety
Mhm.
about situations in school, and
Right,
they feel it in their gut.
right. And I know, Dr. Smith, you're also an elder in church as well. How does the church play an important role in helping the congregants and people at church and those in our community who may be dealing with mental illness or any type of traumatic situation, especially in times like this?
I think our faith has always been a great sustainer. But
Hmm.
I think what I found is that I wasn't hearing enough conversation about mental wellness coming from our community in general.
Hmm.
And so, as an elder, I was torn because I was taught originally that if I had enough faith and prayed hard enough, that I wouldn't have mental illness. But nobody told me that if I prayed hard enough, I would have 20/20 vision. So it was okay to wear your glasses and not have 20/20 vision. Nobody told me that I could have a broken arm and walk in and everybody in the church signed my cast. That was acceptable. So I saw the slicing and dicing of what was an acceptable illness. And I just didn't hear
Wow.
enough dialogue about what was happening in the mind. And it is an organ, just like any other part of your body, that's prone to damage and can also be repaired and treated. And I was concerned as an elder if people would be open, but I'm seeing more and more churches and hearing more and more pastors talk about
Right.
therapy being acceptable, and I'm glad about that.
I am too. I'm starting to hear more about Christian communities offering mental wellness coaches in their churches or support
Yeah.
groups and different things like that. Because again, like you said, it's interesting that it's okay to pray for cancer and believe in God for a cure, but not really praying about your depression or any type of mental illness or anything is not being talked about as much. And now, because we're seeing the whole world is being impacted right now, it's important to us. Do you feel like it's still hard to address these issues in the church? Are people kind of standoffish, or are they more willing to come to you and ask for support or help?
I think the conversation has become more widespread. I really think so, especially now in a pandemic when the whole world is traumatized. In our history of our life, we probably have never seen anything like this where the whole world was experiencing like
Yeah,
trauma at the same time. And
exactly.
we're all traumatized right now to some degree. So having a mental wellness conversation is critical for the healing of our nation as well as prayer.
Right, exactly. So, why was it so important for you to become an activist on mental illness, mental wellness in your community? Why did you feel like it was so important for you to do that?
I don't like stigma of any kind. I don't
Hmm.
like, gender stigma. I don't like
Hmm.
economic stigma, and I certainly
Hmm.
don't like mental stigma. And so
Right,
for a person to assume that because you have a brain injury or some trauma or something going on, that there's a deficit in your character, I
right,
really challenge that people with mental illness can lead very productive lives and citizenry in the community.
right. And so that was your passion. That's where your passion came from because you just don't like injustices, period, in any form. So it's like, look, what can I do to help my community? What can I do to make a difference?
What do I know? What have I lived and what am I now a product of the success of to be able to be an advocate for it?
Right. And how can I share my story to be able to help others and let them know that now you can be, I don't know if you can say you can be healed from this, but you can live a healthy lifestyle if you're suffering with any type of mental illness.
And like any other chronic illness, you
Right.
certainly can. It can be
Yeah.
managed.
Right. It can be managed, definitely. Do you feel like medication uh, should be a part of that regimen, or do you believe in using medications?
I do believe in the right cocktail. And I
Okay.
believe a lot of people stop their medications because they don't like the way it makes them feel, which
Hmm.
makes it harder for providers to diagnose and treat them because the
Right.
cocktailing of the right medication is critical if it's needed. If you needed to take a high blood pressure pill, you wouldn't question it. If you
Yeah.
needed to take an insulin shot, you wouldn't question it.
Right.
So I think we have to treat this biological, physiological illness just like we give it the same respect as we do anything else and be serious about it.
Right. Exactly. So, going forward, you have created Creeping Vines Online. So, it's a website that you've created with mental health resources. Can you give us a little bit more background about your website, Creeping Vines?
Creeping Vines Online came to me as uh, something that I experienced and saw. I lived in this neighborhood where my neighbor across the street had planted vinery on their fence.
Hmm.
And after a while, the vinery crawled up the yard and began to creep up the side of the home.
Hmm.
And depression is like a creeping vine. You
Wow.
don't realize that what was supposed to be foliage has now not only covered the outside of the house that you can't see in, but those living on the inside of that house or that mind can no longer see clearly out either. So it's like a
Wow.
creeping vine. If you don't manage it and cut it back and maintain it and pay attention to it, what looks like decoration or shrubbery really becomes the mask that we learn how to live behind.
Wow. That's such a great analogy as far as what it feels like to live with mental illness, or like you said, if it's not maintained or if it's not dealt with, it can just overtake you. It can cloud
Yes.
your vision. It can interrupt your life in a way that maybe now it's uncontrollable because sometimes you see those vines creeping up someone's house and it's like out of control. At first, it was kind of nice looking and everything, but
Yeah.
now it's out of control.
Yeah. You
So,
no longer see the house, and the person in the house no longer sees out either.
wow. And that's what depression looks like. You're not able to live a full life, a life that's clear and peaceful, and where you can just have peace, or surrounding you. It's like clutter, like you're maybe feeling smothered. Is that a good word? You
It
feeling more?
can it can make you feel those smothering, hopeless feelings, and you just learn to live with it. You don't
Right.
have to.
And a lot of people are feeling hopeless. A lot of people are feeling like, you know what, I'm just going to suffer through this. And then they have this breakdown or this explosion because they haven't dealt with it. And it's so important for us to get the help that we need right now. There's so many resources out there. Creeping Vines online is what it's called. It's a great resource. I'm going to type it in the chat that you can go to that has great information, where you can get support and resources, um, for mental illness, where you can go see a doctor, a psychologist. So, what role do you play? Do you see patients, or do you talk to people, or you just provide referrals? What is your role at this point?
I have a couple of mental wellness certifications, but
Hmm.
I don't do counseling. I do what's called wellness recovery action plans for individuals and families. And they're really good because it helps you to understand. For instance, if you ask yourself, when I'm having those feelings of sadness or my behavior is leaning to a way that might lead to depression, how do I behave? Do you really know how your own behavior changes? And more importantly, does your family recognize those changes in your behavior so that they can help support or pull you out? And so the wellness plan is best created just like going to the dentist for a 6 months checkup when you're feeling good, so that when you get to a place when you're not feeling good, there are some signs and symptoms that have been documented that people can help you and you can help yourself.
Right. So you
So I
create.
do a lot of referrals. I do a lot of recommendations for peer groups,
Mhm.
support groups, and I do a lot of conversations about just helping individuals understand where they are and how to have a healthier conversation about depression.
Right. And I noticed on your, and that's really good information. So, again, audience, if you all have any questions for Dr. Smith, please ask your questions in the comments, share, invite someone to watch this conversation. If you feel like you may be dealing with mental illness, please get the help that you need. Your insurance carrier will refer you to different providers. Go to Creeping Vines to get some resources there as well. So if you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to ask Dr. Smith your questions. She creates a wellness plan. She talked about a wellness plan and just a plan in order for you to get better, how your family can be involved in this as well. Is it important?
Absolutely.
So it's important to have your
Absolutely.
family involved, correct?
It is important because sometimes people can be in your house with you and you have no idea what they're dealing with, especially in this pandemic. One of the things I want to give as a tool for families right now is do a roll call every day. No matter who's living in your house, have everybody answer roll call and ask, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? And what are you afraid of? And that way people stay checked in and connected. Because if your son's 9 years old or 10 years old, for example, sitting in front of his video game, you're going to pass by him and think, oh, he's fine, he's playing his game. But he could really be dealing with some really scary feelings that he does not know how to express. And creating that consistent check in provides an opportunity to talk about it.
Right. So you said to create a roll call. You said, how are you feeling? And what were the other questions that you
How
asked?
are you feeling? What are you afraid of? What are you thinking? What's going on with you right now? And don't allow them to say, "Oh, I'm good, I'm fine." Are there any concerns that you have about being in isolation or the distancing or not seeing your friends or, this routine that you've had to adapt to?
Right.
Create the opportunity to talk about it even when you don't think they need to talk about it.
Right. And just have that conversation. And I think it's good to have that conversation as a family so they don't feel like, oh, I think some children maybe feel like, oh, she's picking on me. She just harassing me or whatever. But I think if we have this conversation as a family, like you said, a roll call, we're checking in on everyone. Sometimes, do you feel like it's good to have it as a family, or is it best to do it individually?
No, it's a roll call. We have a time in our family when everybody's home that we do roll call. We call out the person's name and we're all in the same room and we touch in, we check in. And it's a consistent communication
Right.
platform that we use as a family so that we all know where we are. Because if I saw my husband is sitting in front of Netflix, I might assume he's okay, but he
Yep.
might really have some concerns about what's happening economically or
Sure.
other concerns. And so we just create a platform for communication.
And that's always good, especially now. It's always good to check in, to communicate with one another as a family, to make sure we're doing okay and not just assume that we're okay, but to make sure that we're okay. Joyce had a question. She said, every time you feel depressed, is it always considered mental illness?
Absolutely not. Mental illness is a diagnosed condition.
Hmm.
Depression is something that you can almost understand for yourself, but it is also clinical depression is also diagnosed. Every person feels depression. It's the long-term lingering sadness that
Right.
then causes a clinical concern.
Right. So if you're feeling these overwhelming feelings of sadness for over, like you said, 2 weeks, usually when you start to feeling them like in like 3 or 4 weeks, a month, then you may want to see a healthcare professional or seek counseling in regard to that.
Because you may start to have other thoughts. If you have those thoughts of taking your own life or of
Sure.
worthlessness, of no value, what difference does it make if I'm here? Who's going to care? What's the
Right.
use? Why should I get out of bed? What's the use in taking my medicine? Why should I eat anything? The
Mhm.
isolation, those are things that you definitely don't want to overlook.
Exactly. We have another question from Joyce. She said, is there any natural ways to help with depression?
I take St. John's wort and some other natural remedies,
Hmm.
but just understanding what's happening in your body. And a medical checkup tells you a lot about what's happening in your body overall. So I think we also have to check in and find out with a physical exam what's going on with our body.
Right. And again, everyone, Dr. Smith is not a psychiatrist, and she's not a medical doctor, but she
Absolutely.
has experienced depression. She has experienced this since third grade. She's having these feelings, and she has studied this. She has mental health certifications, so mental illness certifications, mental health certifications. So she knows what she's talking about. But we're also letting you know you're hearing the advice, you're hearing the information that we're providing on this platform. But it's so important to go get professional uh, doctor's recommendations or a psychiatrist or a counselor in regard to these things.
Another thing is to take a mental health assessment. On Creeping Vines Online, there are 4 or 5 different free mental health assessments that you can take electronically and get the results right away to get an idea, and then take those assessments to your doctor and have a conversation. An assessment is always better than a Google diagnosis, because if I Google something and I think I've got it, I'm going to tell myself I've got it. And
Right,
so take a certified diagnosis to give yourself an idea and be truthful about it. Get
right,
those results, and then based on those results, go see someone.
right. So she has provided mental health assessments free online on Creeping Vines Online. So you just type in Creeping Vines Online and you will go to her website and find the mental health assessments there. And like she said, be honest with yourself. This is your time to be honest with who you are. I know during this pandemic, I've experienced a panic attack. I've never had that before. I experienced it. It was very overwhelming for me because, like I said, I thought it was something else because I had other health issues
Symptoms.
prior, and I thought it was something else. And I was like, I'm going to die. I need to, because, it's so overwhelming, it's so overpowering. I didn't know what it was. So it's important for us to take care of ourselves. What are some self care things that we can do during this time in order to just help maintain a level of peace in our lives, besides prayer and studying our word and different things like that? What are some other things that we can be doing?
I think one of the things that helps us more than anything right now is being able to rest, because I think there's a lot of anxiety. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people are sleeping, but a lot of people aren't resting. So
Mm.
finding some calming mechanisms to be able to to treat yourself to a relaxation, meditation, of course, music, and those things that you enjoy doing. You've got to keep doing those. We see
Right.
a lot of people when they get into states of sadness or depression, they stop doing things that they formerly enjoyed. And that's one way to understand whether somebody's dealing with something. But continue to exercise, continue to walk, continue to do your puzzles, to listen to music, and whatever those things were outside of your faith-based things that bring you peace, continue to do those things as well. Eat healthily. Watch out for those coping mechanisms and those triggers to go back to things you've been delivered from.
Right. And when she's, I think you're talking about those coping mechanisms that we,
Unhealthy.
right, like maybe drinking or alcohol abuse, drugs,
Yeah.
um, participating in things that we know is not right for us, not good for us.
Self-sabotage. Yeah, watch the
Exactly.
self-sabotage to numb your pain. When you
Right.
start to numb it, it's easier to get through it, but it's not healthy to do so.
Especially in depression, I know I was reading that alcohol is a depressant.
It is.
And then, so if you're depressed and then you're drinking alcohol, you're taking depressants on top of that, it only exacerbates the pain. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't disappear. It may get worse. So it's really important that you, like she said, you rest, you get sleep at night, that you do those things that you enjoy in order to get back on track where you can be healthy and whole in your mind again. I know that
Absolutely.
I noticed on Creeping Vines, you also have a segment called Men's Talk. I know that men, I guess, don't talk a lot about their mental health or their mental wellness. So tell us a little bit more about that and why you felt like that segment of your platform was so important.
I think mental health for men is important. Men Talk, His Life, His Voice is a time whenever I do any kind of men's initiatives around mental wellness. I call it Men Talk. I try to create an atmosphere where men will talk. Men don't
Mhm.
communicate the same as women, and it's
Right,
not so much about what a man says, it's about what he doesn't say. And so,
exactly.
giving when he is speaking, I try to really listen when there's some sound talk going on. So, Men Talk are my sessions and forums when I have men together discussing mental wellness and what it is. The statistics say that women threaten suicide more often, men complete the task. If a
Right,
man says he's going to take his life, 98% of the time he does. His threat is not a cry for help, it is a declaration. And so we've got to really pay attention to what's happening in the family when there's mental illness going on or depression going on and we're not
right.
listening. So Men Talk is why I created that platform.
Right. And it's so important for us to listen to our men and not feel like, oh, you're whining or, you're emotional or whatever. Just it's so important for us to listen to our sons, our young adult children. So it's really important for us to have these conversations and feel like you said, that stigma of not being able to talk to our young men, even our young men in our schools about what they're feeling and what they're going through. I think it's okay for us to have these conversations and let them know that it's okay. And if they're not okay, it's okay to not be okay.
Yes, we've got to have those conversations, especially with the climate that we're living in right now.
Right.
We've got to have those conversations.
Exactly. And so, everyone, if you're just now joining our platform, I just want to let you all know we're talking about mental wellness and mental illness. We're talking about how you can overcome this or Dr. Smith, what do you use? Do you say how we can maintain or how we can just live with it or
I think, first of all, we've got to understand what we're dealing with. And an assessment helps us do that because we're so quick to say, I've got this or I've got that.
Mhm.
And then once we realize that we've got some type of concern, a condition that needs to be treated, then we do that.
Right.
We do that. You don't have to live the rest of your life in a cave. You don't have to live silently.
Right.
You don't have to be depressed. But if you are, and it's a chronic condition, it can be treated and you can still live a productive and healthy life.
So we're talking about how we can still live a productive and healthy life, whether if you have been diagnosed with mental illness, how it can be treated, what you can do to get the help that you need. So please share this broadcast. If you all have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions in the comments. Dr. Smith, I know that you are a business owner as well. So you own various businesses in your community. What other types of businesses do you have within the Dallas community?
Well, one of my passions is decorating. And so
Okay.
I do a lot of home remodels, home makeovers, home design, which is just something that I've always enjoyed doing. I do a lot of curriculum design and development for companies that want to create different training programs. My background is training and development. So I develop a lot of training programs, operations manuals, curriculum development. I also do a lot of business coaching. I love brainstorming about business and empowerment in developing leaders in business, especially through change management. So those are just a few of the things that I do in the community related to business.
Okay. And you said change management. What does that mean?
Very often, I did my dissertation on leadership and change management, and I said in my statement that leaders don't respond well to change. So I like to find a way to help leaders adapt to change, change in their community, change in their status, change in their business. And
Right.
especially during this time, there is no new normal. That new normal has already changed. We went to a new normal, and now that has even changed. So
Right.
being able to be productive business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders, even right where we are, and who knows what's next.
Right. So not only does Dr. Smith help you with to get your mind more stabilized and to give you the resources that you need, she also helps you in building your business. So it's so important for us to have our mental capacities, our mental faculties in place in order to have a successful business. Do you notice when you're helping people build their business or branding or anything like that, that they're also struggling emotionally as well? Or do those two things come together sometimes or
Leaders
cross?
do struggle, and
Mhm.
very, very seldom do they have a safe place to say so. So that's helped quite a bit in helping people build businesses that they thought they were going to have to bury.
Wow.
And so it's been very impactful to deal with leaders, anger management, change management.
Right.
And so restructuring the business to a virtual environment, getting people to think differently and behave differently and put the infrastructure in place to have long-term sustainability.
Right. And like you said, it's so important to have a safe place to
Hmm.
come and talk about whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling overwhelmed with, and be able to share what you're going through without feeling judged or looked down upon or belittled.
Yes, we're
That-
all in the process of change.
And it's so important, especially when we're struggling with something, to feel like we're supported. And I believe that Creeping Vines provides that safe space. Um, So I know you have an online group called Unmasked Women. So tell us
Yes.
a little bit more about Unmasked Women.
That was the hallmark of Creeping Vines, women's mental health.
Okay.
And I started the first year just talking about, a woman recognizing her beauty from the inside out and
Mhm.
having those safe places and conversations to talk about what she was dealing with and what she was feeling. And so we've evolved to our group Unmasked Women, where we provide a safe place for mental wellness conversations about life and day-to-day activities and
Mhm.
anything that a woman might be going through, and be able to find a peer and support. It's really a support group to
Mhm.
be able to find the help you need to make it through to the next step, and then the resources if that's what you need.
Right. So it's called Unmasked Women on Facebook. So please look that group up on Facebook and join her group if you feel like you need support or, like she said, a safe space or safe place to come and just get the support and the help that you need from other women who may be struggling. What have you found the most challenging with talking about mental wellness and mental health with the African American community?
The biggest thing is the sigh of relief that I'm not by myself. I'm not the only one feeling this way. I'm not the only one going through it, or my family member is not the only one.
Right.
And so that big sigh of relief to know that, okay, I can say something because somebody else gets it. I'm not here alone. I
Right.
found that to be huge, and I didn't expect it to be, but it really has continued to be the thing where women have said, I'm finally glad to take off the mask and know that I'm not the only one.
Right. And it's just so important to know that, like, I'm not the only one going through this. I'm not the only one who is hurting like this. Someone else understands what I'm dealing with. And it's so important to connect with those women in order to know that there is victory. There is, I can get through there. There's hope when I know that someone else has gone through what I've gone through and they're living prosperous and productive lives.
Yeah, solutions oriented and not, we have our share of venting, of course, but
Yeah.
it's more solution oriented to say, okay, so now what? What do I
Right.
do?
Right.
Yeah.
What do I do next? How do I go forward? So
Hmm.
I know you, so on the line still of mental wellness, tell us about if you can share about your book series, Casey.
Casey is something that I've been working on for a couple of years now. And Casey is a biracial young man that I created in this series of children's books that I'm writing for Youth Life, which is our mental health for youth initiative. And Casey is someone who is a preteen. When I first started writing the series, it was a storybook. And my publisher suggested that I bring the conversation up to middle school to high school level
Okay.
so that I could create a reader and not a storybook. And so
Okay.
we've revamped the story to go more in depth about what the individual is dealing with. He's a biracial young man from a blended family. He's dealing with a lot of day-to-day issues that a lot of youth are dealing with, and his story is unique in that he is the one who's able to say in those words that maybe we don't always get to say what he's feeling. So we kind of
Mhm.
glimpse into his life to understand from his perspective what that struggle is like.
Right. And so when will this series be available?
I'm hoping that by next year it'll be finished. It's a 3-book series
Okay.
that I'm working on finishing among a couple of other books I'm writing at the same time, one on servant leadership and then
Okay.
another one on relationships.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'm really focusing the energy as I'm inspired to get those done.
That's awesome. Awesome. We are looking forward to hearing about that and hopefully having you back on to discuss your next project. So we will be so happy to hear about those things. So you all please follow Dr. Demetrice Smith on social media. And so how do you balance like work and work and family? Because you have so much going on. You're an elder, you deal with mental health, you're writing books, you're just busy in the community, you're decorating and all these things. How do you balance family and what your business is?
Prioritizing,
Mhm.
absolutely prioritizing. And I used to be a workaholic, to be honest with you. I was
Mhm.
one of those people who couldn't get done until all the laundry was folded and put away
Right.
to you know, but learning how to balance, that's the key, learning how to balance and
That's
then
so good.
teaching myself self-care. If I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not resting or eating right or being able to relax, I'm not going to be good to anybody else. So finding the balance and then time management.
That's good. And what is your self-care routine, if you don't mind sharing? What does that look like?
I'm kind of a bougie coffee drinker. I
Okay.
love very nice coffee. And
Mhm.
so I love before the pandemic, I'm a true spa girl. So I
Okay.
love a nice spa day. And so I am
Yeah.
learning how to do some of that at home now, but
Okay.
definitely maintaining those things that I enjoy that give me peace. Alone time, time to read, time to relax and meditate. I'm taking advantage of that time. When my house is quiet, I take advantage of it.
I know. Isn't that so awesome when your house is so peaceful and quiet and just being able to, like you said, listen to some music, take a bath, a relaxing shower, soak in the tub, put on your face mask or whatever, like you said, those spa day treatments that you can do at home and then having that nice cup of coffee. So that's so much
Yeah,
fun. So
that does it for me.
yeah. So everybody take care of yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Self-care is so important, especially right now. Don't neglect yourself because when we are lacking, we're not able to help someone else that may need our support or our help because we're struggling. So it's important that we always take care of ourselves and then find someone we can connect with that will help build us up, help lift us up. I mean, I know that's not always easy. You may have to encourage yourself sometimes, but it's always good to have someone in your life that, even if it's just one person, to send you a text or to lift you up, and you do the same for that person.
Yes, having an accountability partner is also something that I've included to
Okay.
stay accountable in a lot of areas of my life. So, an accountability partner, just like a prayer partner, they can be the
Yeah.
same person. They help you to stay on track, and that's really been good for me.
Yes, that is so important to have someone check on you, like you said, help you to stay accountable, to say, hey, did you do this? Or are you drinking your water? Did you eat? What did you do today as far as exercise? Did you get moving on today? So it's
Mhm.
good to have someone like that, or just to say, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah,
And then for
haven't heard
you,
your voice. So,
right.
what's going on with you? Yeah.
And even for you that person should be someone that if you say, I'm not okay, would be willing to hold you up.
It has to be someone you can say I'm not okay with. If you can't say I'm not okay to somebody, then find somebody you can tell your real truth to. Because every day I'm not going to say I'm wonderful. Some days I'm going to say, if that's the case, today's not so good. And then I need to be able to talk about what's going on and why.
It is so important because then you're releasing and letting go of those things that you're holding on to, so you won't implode or, like you said, start feeling depressed or having those chemical imbalances due to stress or nerves and different things like that.
Trauma takes
Trauma.
on all shapes, forms, and fashions. So, yeah.
It does. So, how can our audience contact you? How can they get in touch with you if they need? I know you have your Creeping Vines online, but are there other ways that they can contact you um, in order to
If
get
they
you?
go on Creeping Vines online, there's an email box. So you can send me an email and I'll get it
Okay.
right then. You can also reach Creeping Vines at 214
Okay.
And so I'm happy to help you find a doctor, a therapist, psychologist, support group,
Okay.
assessment, or whatever you need. I'm happy to schedule some time to do some wellness plan mapping with you. Even if you've
Okay.
never felt depression before and you just want to go through a wellness plan, I think it's important to have one. Just like every family has a will, every family should have a wellness plan.
Exactly. And what you said is 214-494-1927.
1927. Creeping Vines online, 214-494-1927.
So this is how you can get in touch. You can go there to find Dr. Smith's email address and you can email her. You can go on Creeping Vines online to take the wellness assessment, or you can call in order to get resources. This is the phone number for you to get resources. So please share this information and use this information if you need this. So is there anything, any last minute tips or suggestions that you can share with our audience that will, we're all, like you said, we're all going through a real life trauma together right now. So what can you share with our audience that will help them stay encouraged or just to help them to keep peace forefront of their mind?
I think for one thing, if you are a business owner or a pastor or someone, I also do seminars to help you be able to deal with it. Uh,
Mhm.
I do a lot of training for organizations to help them deal with mental wellness and mental illness concerns in the workplace, in the
Oh,
church, or wherever.
that's
But as
awesome.
an individual, I think an assessment, if you've never had one, I definitely recommend one. And then have a plan for sharing it with someone if it shows that you need the help.
Right,
Rest, exercise, and fluids. Those basics still serve well even now. And then stop watching the news every night. Turn it
right,
off. Sometimes it only feeds the anxiety. So sometimes you got to learn not only what to take in, but what to reject.
right. And that is so important, not overwhelming yourself with what is going on around us, but this just being able to trust God that He is in control. He has
Yes.
the final say. he still has his hand on this world, and that he loves us, and we can always go to him,
Yes.
in prayer and crying out to him, spending time in worship, spending time reading our words, spending time in prayer. Those things are still, like you said, so essential, so
Yes.
vital. In
In a time when we feel helpless, we have to know that God is sovereign. He's still
Yes,
sovereign. He
yes,
hasn't lost or his power hasn't been diluted. He's still sovereign. And
yes,
so
yes.
taking it all to him and leaving it there is
Mhm.
the best medicine that we can give every day as a dose to ourselves. And then if we need therapy, add that to the prescriptive method, and it works.
That's so awesome. Prayer or God and therapy. What else do you need? If that's what you need, that's what you need. So seek God in prayer. Get help if you need help. Reach out, like I said, contact your medical doctor, your physician for some referrals. Like she said, take that assessment and then take it to your medical doctor. Make an appointment, take it to him, and you all talk about it together.
Yeah.
Go over to see if there's anything that else that needs to be done. So right before we exit, we like to always ask our ladies who are our guests, what makes you a bougie girl? This platform was designed to uplift and inspire and encourage to provide resources like what we did on tonight. And bougie is the acronym that stands for bold, one of a kind, unbothered. We're not worried about or concerned what other people think about us. We're God's girls. We're intentional and elegant. So, what makes you a bougie girl on tonight?
I think I'm a bougie girl because my authenticity never changes.
That's
I'm
awesome.
always the same and I'm authentically myself. And I've learned how to love who I am and become a safe place for others to also love and be who they are.
That's so awesome that you are a safe place. Unmasked Women on Facebook is her group. It's a safe place. You can go there and get resources and information. You can watch this replay. You can go on and watch some of the things that she's doing. And do you have anything coming up that you want to share with our audience, that maybe like a seminar or something that you're doing that maybe that can help them or?
I just did a symposium on yesterday. And
Mhm.
so, but I have something we have through Unmasked Women have some projects coming up. In September, we're going to do a Labor Day project.
Okay.
We're really trying to get Bibles into the hands of different individuals who may not have access to them. And
Okay.
so it's called our Labor of Love project. And so we're going to
Nice.
be talking more about that. And then I
Okay.
have a Men Talk symposium coming up toward the end of the year. So stay tuned for that.
That's awesome. And in order for you all to find out more about that, please join her Facebook group, Unmasked, to get more information. And again, Dr. Smith, we're so grateful that you were on this platform with us on tonight. So thank
Thank
you
you
all
for
so much.
having me.
You're welcome. You've just been a blessing. And so your voice is so powerful. We need your voice right now. So thank you again. Don't log off yet. So thank you everyone for joining us. Share this broadcast. Again, reach out to Dr. Smith if you have questions. You all have a blessed weekend. Enjoy your evening. Thank you again for watching. Have a great evening.
Goodbye, everyone.